Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Billy Watson TV. It gives me great pleasure today to have a first-time guest on the show. I've seen her interviews with Guy Anderson, who I interviewed recently, and that got me interested in her work. So I'm fairly new to her work, but I've since been watching quite a lot of YouTube videos on. She's got a YouTube channel and a podcast, the Great Awakening podcast. I really don't know where to start this interview because she does so many different topics. They're all out there. And Christ knows where this is going to go, but welcome to the show, Elisabeth Hancock.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I do actually have a specialist area, but I'm interested in so many things that and then of course, it's just such a big sort of like wide area, isn't it? I think everything is connected, everything links up. We have like the alien industry here, we've got the Tartaria stuff here, we've got myths and legends here, but it's all connected. It's all connected.
Very much so, and I think if you aren't talking about all the different things, then you're missing the bigger picture,
Yes, that's exactly it. So the alien people are all talking about aliens, but they're not linking it to the old world, So it's just becomes this sort of, random thing that no one can get their head around. But when you join up all the dots, you can see that was the old world. The old world, goodness knows what happened to it and where it went and who did it. But the old world, I think it was multidimensional. I think that everything is multidimensional. There's nothing new happening now. Aliens have always been around. UFOs have always been around. AI has always been around. Mobile phones have always been around. Everything. It's just all coming back. So whether there was a reset, and they're just rebranding it and bringing it back again, or whether they decided that, because I think the Tartaria or the old world were using a different type of energy to power their cities. It was a cleaner energy, a free energy. And maybe someone thought, oh, hang on a second, let's start charging them all for energy, and we'll bring all this stuff back again and say that it's all stuff that we've created now, but nothing has been created now. It's all it was all in the old world as well.
We see lots of hieroglyphs in that, and it looks like they've got laptops and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And certainly, if you think we're the most advanced society, then you've got a few screws loose, because some of the buildings and stuff that they used to do in the past are mind-blowing.
Exactly. We're definitely not the most advanced. I mean, I think the most intriguing questions around this is, have we been reset, and what is a reset and how does that even work, And I think that's where the only way that I can understand this and wrap my head around it is to think of reality as multidimensional and simulation, which, so many scientists now, researchers, prominent ones, in fact, are coming forward and saying that there's just so much evidence to show that we are living in a simulation. So for my first book, when I was researching that, I understood about the mind and how it can be programmed, around the ego. The ego is we can see it like a piece of software. I suspect that we use this to allow ourselves to experience a physical reality, but something came along and hacked it, hijacked it, and has been reprogramming us ever since. And I think the resets are probably a mind reset rather than a physical reset, because of course nothing is actually physical. We know this now. So if we're not a physical planet, then what are we? If we're not physical beings, what are we? And it makes a lot more sense when you look at it in those terms.
It's very hard to actually get really nitty-gritty in what's going on, because there's different ideas, different people say stuff, and well, that could be true and this could be true, and sometimes they contradict each other, but it's hard to...
I think it's all true, actually, and it is contradictory, and that's why I'm not too sure there is one truth. I'm looking forward to things like the 5 million Tibetan scrolls being released to the public and stuff like that, but I'm beginning to think that there's always going to be some level of censorship, and suppression. I don't think that our world leaders really want us to know what's happened on our planet, because of course they're complicit as well. They know.
Why are they our leaders? This is what I can't get my head around. They're the most despicable parasite.
Self-appointed, I know, self-appointed, yeah. And I'm not talking about the elites, actually, because they're just parasites, you know, but the actual world leaders in terms of government leaders, you know, yes, they're all self-appointed as well, because we now know that it's all beginning to come out that all these elections have been rigged for decades and decades. You know, none of these people have been voted in. They're all part of these elite families, you know, Illuminati lines, whatever it is we want to call them. And, you know, but it's all coming out into the open now. And that's what I find interesting. There's so much information coming out. And, you know, I'm beginning to realize that there isn't one answer to any of this. And as long as you can be okay with that, you won't drive yourself insane, you know?
As far as these families go, you know, because our history, once you realize it's his story, you know, and, you know, Guy Anderson, and I think yourself mentioned maybe 1776, around about then, there was like a reset. And it seems to be like a lot of them are planning to go underground again. It's almost like these, and they talk about the Great Reset that's coming up. Whether it's natural phenomenon or they create these resets because people are getting too knowledgeable maybe. But do you think that they go underground, something happens to clear the population, and then they come back up again and write the history and put themselves in positions of power?
Yes, I think if we were living in a one-dimensional reality, that would probably be how it worked. But we're not living in a one-dimensional reality. We're living in multiple dimensions, and that makes it far, far harder. There isn't just one answer, and this is something that, you know, I've been struggling with myself. We can't make sense of this by looking at linear thinking or even one-dimensional thinking. We have to get really beyond that and start joining up the dots from all the other areas as well. And it's pretty clear to me that whoever these parasitic elites are, they're either not human themselves or they're having a great deal of help from beings who aren't human. And when you look at the regressive species and beings and entities, I mean, you've got, you know, sort of the demonic ones, the interdimensional beings who don't have physical bodies. And they're, you know, they're the archons, they're sort of inhabiting people. And they, you know, they come from one area. You know, and then you've got the like, you know, what we call extraterrestrials, ultra-terrestrials, inner earth, all these different things. We're living in a massive multi-dimensional multiverse, and all of these things are real. You know, they all exist on some level or other. And so then when you look at our world in terms of that, so what is the reset then? Well, I suspect it probably is a mind reset, a reprogramming reset. And what I've understood about these regressive species, or at least 3 of them, is that they're master mind controllers, you know? And also what I'm understanding about the old world as well is that they were master magicians. You know, they really were dark magicians. And I think that's probably what happened with the old world, is that we've always had magic, white magic, black magic. And we can call it, you know, light and dark and evil and good and all these sorts of things. And I think that the dark magicians were able to wield something in some way. And there's a part of me that suspects that this reality is just, we've just been stapled down into one dimension, one-dimensional thinking. And actually, these, you know, the old world, these things, all of this past is all still there on some level or other, you know.
So you're talking about, I thought it was quite an interesting one with the crop circles, and you're kind of saying that they're always there, but yet it's our consciousness rising that's allowing us to see them, which is just a little bit multi-dimensional. Do you believe, like, sometimes you have a choice in life and we make one choice and we stay, but that alternative choice kind of continues in another dimension kind of thing?
Yeah, that's timeline theory. And actually, you know, it seems to make quite a lot of sense to me. We're just beginning to, you know, remember or re-understand how all of this stuff works and everything. But yeah, you know, I do.
So the Mandela effect is like jumping timelines and stuff like that, possibly.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, the Mandela effect. Yeah, very interesting. And about the heart as well. So, you know, the heart being now in the middle of the body, you know, whereas we all grew up thinking it was the left-hand side, and, you know, these sorts of things. I find this very weird. And that's why I wonder if, I'm not too sure that maybe the last physical reset was in the 1700s, but I think that we've had little like mini reprograms you know, every decade, or, you know, I mean, every decade we've had a new terror put into the world. You know, people start waking up. I think the elites, they know that we're on this ascension journey. I think that the entire multiverse is sort of like, you know, moving, evolving. I think it's spiritual growth, which is like, you know, an energetic growth rather than a physical one. And I think that everything in the multiverse is doing that. And this planet is also trying to do it. And I think they're just, something happened, whatever it may be, and they're just trying to hold back this natural spiritual evolution which everyone is on. And you know, you can't, you know, it's a natural, it's like trying to hold back the water, you know, trying to stop nature. You can't really. It's something which is happening. So we can see the rising energies of the planet. I'm speaking to more and more people who are really feeling positive about the future. They feel like they're waking up just to some sort of very benevolent energy. I think we can all feel it. It's what I call the white hats. I think the white hats is a consciousness. You know, it's a benevolent energy, not actually specific people. And you know, we're moving into this. So I do actually feel very hopeful about the future. Whatever the reset is, I don't think that we're going to be wiped off the planet in the way that we possibly were before.
I notice quite often that you do talk about planets and space and galaxies and stuff like that, but then people talk about flat Earth or maybe a holographic, you know, simulation and stuff like that appears flat. So when you say planet, this idea of a spinning ball in space and all the rest of it, do you go along with that? Because I know you talk about possibly Tiamat forming the Milky Way, the asteroid belt and things like that, which appear quite physical and appear like the heliocentric model.
Yeah.
But then, again, at the same time, are we living inside our own head, inside this kind of simulation? Where do you stand on that?
Again, I think it's whether we're thinking in one-dimensional thinking, which is physical reality, or whether we're thinking in multidimensional thinking, which is everything's possible. You know, one is limited, one is unlimited. If we are expanded, we expand our minds and we step into unlimited thinking, then I think for me, I perceive and feel and sense a very different reality to one where I'm trying to find physical evidence of everything, because there isn't physical evidence of everything. And I think it just depends what type of part of your brain you want to use to think about it. But for me, yeah, I don't think it matters whether the Earth is flat or whether it's round. I think that there is some sort of a firmament. I don't think that it was originally created as a bad thing. And again, I think it was hacked at some point. I don't think that this we could still have a firmament around, you know, a round ball. In terms of, but again, this is physical thinking, and we're not physical, you know. So really, we're looking at more like a toroid shape and sacred geometry, you know, which is sort of how the universe is made up of sacred geometry and holographic shapes. And I think that is probably how it's all sort of fit together. I see more as this planet and the universe more like a dandelion. You know, when you blow the dandelions and they just all go off in different directions, and those could be like the wormholes or the portals. I see it more like that, really. And again, I just think it just depends how you perceive things and how you're viewing the reality around you.
I'd like to ask you about where you grew up and how you kind of got into this. Were you always naturally kind of, I don't know, thinking outside the box? And how did you start to go down this path and write these books and stuff? Because you've obviously spent a long time thinking about these things and writing books, and it's very, you know, mental stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I suppose, I mean, I think I had a normal childhood. You know, I was always a bit odd, a bit weird in school, you know, used to do weird things. used to do weird things as a child as well. But, you know, I think everyone's like that, really, aren't they? We're all a bit odd. We're all a bit weird.
Yeah.
And I think what clinched it for me, what started it all off for me, really, I mean, I've always been very intuitive, you know, but I think many, many people are, you know. You have to really get outside your own head, get outside your own mind, because that's continuously blocking you all the time. And, you know, get beyond your thoughts, get beyond your thinking brain. And so I think
people identify with the ego and they kind of get boxed in.
Yeah. So you know, you can't, if you're not open-minded, you know, if you're not open for new information, you won't get these sorts of downloads, you know. If you're someone that, you know, like you just have to do everything like everyone else, you know, you want to sort of, you know, toe the line and, you know, and be part of, you know, like society and be accepted and all those sorts of things. And you wouldn't get this, you wouldn't do this path. You know, this path, as everyone has probably already told you, is a very lonely path. And you just have to feel like, you know, it's your path. And I do feel like it's my path. But I think the thing that changed it for me really was when my mum died 10 years ago. And I write about this in my first book, funnily enough.
Which is called Work with Energy.
Work your energy. Yeah. You know, I talk about channeling and everything. So, and I do a lot of channeling. And you can connect with different entities and beings, you know, and some of them are not nice. And, you know, I tend to connect with universal mind because I get the most interesting information from there. But when I was writing
how can you trust what it is? A lot of people say when you do that stuff, it could be, you know, dark side kind of pretending they're good side, you know.
Yeah, you have to trust your intuition. You have to connect with your heart, and you have to really, really, really learn to trust what you know to be true, which of course, as you know, we've all been taught not to trust ourselves. We've all been taught to give all our power away to the governments and the parasitic elites, you know, and that's what our society has been like for, you know, centuries. So you have to, you know, really, really trust yourself. And this is incredibly hard to do because it doesn't go down well with people, you know? So yeah, so when you're, and I mean, I teach psychic development, which I've been teaching for 3 years, you know, so I'm working with students and I'm teaching them how to do these things all the time. And when they first start, you know, they can't do any of this. And then 3 years later, you know, it's fine. They can understand what I'm talking about as well. So it's a process that you have to go through. You can't explain or teach. You just have to go through it. And then when you come out the other side, you're like, oh, yeah, okay, that's what you mean. And it's the same thing. So connecting with my dead mother definitely shifted my thinking and my brain waves in some way.
So did she give you a sign from the other side, or what made you start to do that? Were you meditating as she came through, or how did you begin to connect?
Well, she died. And, you know, and I was stuck in a tiny flat, too hot to go outside with tiny children. And I was trying to deal with the grief of losing her. And I just used to talk to her, you know, as you would.
Right.
And then one day she answered. She said something back.
Right. In your head, you heard the voice.
Yeah, well, yeah. I asked her because my sister was coming to visit, and I asked her if she wanted to say anything to my sister. And I heard this loud voice in my head, and I said it to my sister, and it was so profound for her. And I just got, you know, like goosebumps, and I thought, oh my God, was I actually talking to my mother? And then I started to research it because, of course, you know, the ego, the logical mind, it needs to understand all of this to be able to wrap its head around how it works. So I started researching string theory, timeline theory, multidimensionality, you know, like the Carl Jung archetypes, because my daughter at the same time was also talking about her past life, and she used to see things in our flat, lots of like, you know, sort of entities and things in our flat. I don't think that they were bad, but it made me sort of just start researching, you know, what all of this stuff could be. And you know, that was like 8 years ago or 10 years ago. And, you know, like I said, it's a process, you know, this was 10 years ago. So you have to sort of walk down that route. And then every day you get more and more downloads, more and more information coming through. And it just helps you to see a very different reality. But what I'm struggling with now is in my books, I provide a huge amount of references because people, they need proof, just like I needed proof. And now I'm into the area where I can't provide references anymore. We're now moving into a different realm, and now you have to start really trusting yourself and tapping into your own memories, I think, epigenetic memories, your own inner wisdom, the wisdom of the heart, in order to understand what is true, what has happened, what is happening, what is going to happen. And these are the sorts of questions that I'm asking Universal Mind now. And like I said, I don't think we're going to be wiped out again. Or if we do, then I think either we'll go into inner earth or be whisked off in the arcs, because the arcs are talked about. So many references to arcs in the Bible. And sometimes it's also referred to as being metal as well, not wood, So I don't think that we're on our own. I don't think we've ever been on our own. I think that we're all related to many, many different bloodlines ourselves, inner earth, cosmic, whatever it may be. We just got stapled down into one-dimensional 3D reality, possibly around 300 years ago. And now we're coming out of it. We're waking up back out of it for a variety of reasons.
So I've heard you talk about, the Khazarians and what they've become, and, basically are world leaders. You can call them different names, but that kind of group. Do you think we've almost like, this is part of a process that we're going through? Because it seems like these evil people in charge, and it seems to be Keir Starmer, and they're all setting up this World War III appears to be on the agenda, and everything else that's going on. Is it meant for us just to have an easy ride here, or are we almost like supposed to go through this? It's like iron or something getting heated up and molded into shape. That we have to it toughens us up spiritually. We're just living here in a peaceful environment, growing our food and living in a happy community. We wouldn't evolve our spirit. So it's almost like we need this kind of dark energy or entities here. Or do you think that's, a glitch in the system and we shouldn't be dealing with this, but they're going to have a time period that will run out and then we'll get beyond that? What's the purpose of this madness that we're living through just now, kind of thing?
Yeah, well, before I started researching the old world, I would have said, yes, because, I've obviously been teaching spirituality, been walking this spiritual path for a very long time. I have subsequently understood that New Age spirituality is a complete trap. It's complete BS. Yeah. And again, you have to navigate, because spirituality is real. I think parts of religion are real, but it's all been, just hijacked and inverted continuously. And I think we're just sort of on this just spiritual evolution, and we're always just being pulled off into this rabbit hole and pulled off into that rabbit hole, because they're just trying to stop us from what we call ascension. But ascension is a biblical word, and I don't tend to use that so much, but I think it's evolution, So I think that the entire multiverse is just spiraling, up into higher energy waves. I think sort of that's how it works. And but looking at the old world architecture and looking at their ancient technologies, and I'm just currently researching about stargates and portals, and the mud fossils, the giants, that look like they could have actually been real and have turned into stone, the petrified bodies, these sorts of things. And then, just researching about the myths and legends as well. And that sort of makes me believe that, well, what, we can see here that this world was not only very, very different, but it was very amazing. It was very uplifting, which you can see with the sacred geometry. And, the buildings are amazing. They're beautiful. I've just been researching about the grotesques and the gargoyles, which have been added to the buildings, pulling the vibration down. It seems like this was like the Gothic era, that the vibration started to be pulled down. Mm-hmm. And it's like they've been doing it for 2,000 years. If it is 2,000 years, it's possibly 1,000 years with an added extra 1,000 years onto it. But I think that this world was amazing. It was incredible. I suspect that we come here to have a physical experience, but I don't think that we have to go through these. I don't believe in life lessons and things like that. Maybe, learning different aspects of ourselves, maybe having, like learning about love and experiencing a family and all these sorts of things. But I think that this is all done through love. I think that the dark has just managed to come in probably from another universe. And, and now we can see that they're opening up portals and they're just letting more and more and more crap in. The Vatican has let in the demons, which is why they created an exorcism department. And CERN, CERN is busy opening up portals. The Philadelphia experiment, these are all signs of portals being opened up. And
Jack Parsons as well had done something crazy.
Yeah, which is that?
Jack Parsons, I think he had somebody, the guy invented Scientology, and Jack Parsons, they done a mad experiment, which apparently lots of demons, and Aleister Crowley done various things.
Aleister Crowley, yes, exactly. I mean, he was a real dark magician. If you want proof of a dark magician, it's him. And Aleister Crowley, I mean, I think he's part of those sort of family lineages as well. You've got the British royal family, who are just, I don't even know who they are, I mean, either they're not human, or, shapeshifters, or they're a hybrid line of some sort. But I think the original bloodline rulers, I think that they possibly were. I'm researching about the red hair as well, because I find this really fascinating. And I talk about this a lot in my second book, and again, it's just interesting, but there's no absolute definitive answer to any of this.
Because the red hair is a recent introduction, you said, the recent thing as far as humanity goes.
Well, it's been around for up to 100,000 years. It's been around longer than blonde hair. But the white skin itself has only been around supposedly for 7,000-8,000 years. So, which I'm not too sure I believe that one, to be honest. But
it's hard to know. I mean, you also talk about the Anunnaki. What would you say? Do you think that what do you think the Anunnaki? Because some people criticize Zachariah Stitchin. He's almost like a disinformation agent. He puts some truth in, what they do. What's your thoughts on the Anunnaki? And then you've got the missing link theory of humanity. You've got Neanderthals or whatever, and then there's one they can't find for, and then there's us.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the Anunnaki were definitely on this planet. I feel that they were like a multicultural race themselves. And, I mean, you only have to look at all of our different sort of, skin colors, hair colors, eye colors, and all these different things, different shapes of heads. We've got the elongated head, we've got the elongated head coming out here, the one coming up here, the round skull. I mean, just so many different races and species.
So do you think they were created by the Anunnaki or whatever? No. How do you think we've got different races here? And do you think
that they came here? Yeah, I think that we are a planet filled with many, many different beings that have come from all over the place. And the common denominator is the human DNA, which the Indian Vedas talk about. The human DNA or humanoids exist on 400,000 planets on this side of the galaxy alone. And then we've got Dr. Gary Nolan's work, which he talks about the human genome, human DNA being traced back 9 billion years. We probably your watchers have all heard about the Lyran theory, that we originally came here from Lyra, and that's where this human or us came from. But I think that there are many, many different bloodlines. I think this whole tracing us back to one male and female ape is, I mean, I don't even know how geneticists can even present that one to the world, like without thinking, oh my God, people are going to think that I'm so crap at my job.
Yeah, I mean, the whole theory of evolution is obviously Darwin's theory.
Yeah, I know. I mean, Exactly. So, I can't believe they're still teaching it in school. I mean, it's so limited, and then of course they've got, like the poor kids, believing that not only are they monkeys, but the ones with the darker skin are even more monkeys than the one with white skin. I mean, it's just wrong. Why would you do that to a child?
Yeah. Well, there is a lot of issues these days. Obviously, it seems to be with the mixing of the cultures or whatever. But when I walk past a nursery, you see the children playing the different races, and they don't bother at that age.
No.
But as we get older, I don't know, maybe just the background of where these people are coming from, has been difficult, and then they're getting put into our culture. What do you think about what's happening these days with regard to, they seem to be mixing cultures intentionally to try and stir up, they put in the news and it's like divide and conquer. But obviously there's places like Ireland where stuff seems to be, heating up. Do you think there's a purpose behind that, or what do you think about racist mixing? Should they mix?
They're constantly pitching us against each other. But, I mean, I'm not too sure I agree with the theory that we're all clones, and our skin color was all created as different clones. It doesn't sit with me so well, that one. And it's not like I can't prove anything around this. But what I feel is that we're all different races that came from all over the place. And, we were living in this, this old world empire. We were all living together, and, just something came into the planet. And I mean, the best evidence I've found of this is the Bosnian pyramids, that they have these runes underneath the pyramids, and it talks about how the cosmic gate has to be broken and shut down, that they need to conquer. So, it's insinuating that something came, started fighting, whatever. They had to close down the cosmic gate, and they would open it again once the fighting has ended. Well, it hasn't been opened again. So does that show us that something came here and we've been at war ever since? Now, if you're looking at the Bosnian pyramids, I mean, they're like 30,000 years old, but I'm not too sure that we can really necessarily agree with carbon dating. But if we do, 30,000 years old, and then we have to think, well, what happened? At what point was the cosmic gate shut down? If we think about 8,000 years ago as being the restart of civilization again, and 10,000 years ago, 11,000 years ago being the global flood, maybe that was when it was shut down. But you see, all this feels like ever such a long time ago. And then we've got, 300 years ago, we had all these old world buildings. So how do they all fit in?
A lot of people think our history is more recent than, a lot of it gets put back too far, and a lot of the stuff happened a lot more recent than we think.
Yes, I think so. I also think that these old world buildings, they're so reminiscent of Atlantis and Lemuria, and I feel there's got to be a connection there somewhere. Either they were rebuilt again afterwards, and possibly they were rebuilt, using levitation and more of like a consciousness type of building rather than a physically, putting blocks of concrete on top of each other, or that this was Atlantis, and what we're seeing with these buildings is that either Atlantis didn't end that long ago, or these buildings are far older. And it's hard to figure out which one, and I'm sort of diving between both of them at the moment, trying to figure out, are we really old or are we really new?
Certainly, the whole Tartaria thing, and when I lived close to Edinburgh, and I grew up, and nobody was talking about this, so you don't think about it. You just think, that's the old buildings. But when you actually wake up to it, every time I'm in Edinburgh, I was in even Glasgow last week, and the buildings are just absolutely stunning. And you're like, wow, how the hell did they build that? And I don't know, as you maybe alluded to there, some part of me thinks it's even just consciousness, or some we would call magic now.
Magic.
They've done these things, because I was in Belfast Cathedral as well recently, and the height of it, you're just like, who the hell would build something like that, But again, they talk about the big organs in it, and maybe they were getting used for sound healing and stuff, or to be some kind of energy in these buildings that they weren't designed just to worship Jesus or whatever. There was something else there, especially when you get the cymatics of the sand and the sound resonance that matches the
rose windows.
The windows and that, yeah. So
yeah, I know, it's incredible. I mean, certainly it could have been built using sound. You know, there's that Coral Castle in Florida, but this guy just basically built this entire building at night, and no one ever saw him lift anything, but they all heard this high-pitched sort of noise.
Right.
And certainly when you look at that, you think, well, yeah, they could have built them like that. I mean, sound creates everything. Sound has created the entire multiverse, you know.
In the beginning was the word.
Exactly.
They do tell us, it's up to us to try and decode it. Seems like a crazy game going on.
It is a crazy game, and I think that's the problem with, and I think that's why we're dealing with dark magicians and master mind controllers. You know, they've had mind control technology since the 1950s at least. I'm sure a lot earlier than that. You know, and this whole sort of idea of regressive grays and coming now, as much as it is a nice idea, like I said, I don't think that any of this is happening now. It's all happened before, and all of our ancient texts and everything, they all allude to the fact that we've always had extraterrestrial beings here. We've always, you know, we were trading and doing business with the inner earth people right up until 1550s, when the Catholic Church basically told all the landowners to close down the gates, you know, shut everything down, and then essentially put out a notice saying if anyone was caught doing business with the subterranean cultures, they'd be put in prison, you know?
That's quite interesting.
Yeah, you know, so I mean, it's like there's nothing new. It's just being rebranded the whole time, and that's what the resets are. It's like a sort of, you know, like a mind control reset, and that's why we've got the Mandela effect and all these sorts of things, because our minds, it's like we're just tripping the whole day, the whole time, and we don't know what's real and what isn't anymore. And that's exactly what they want us to feel like. But I also think that is because we're multidimensional as well.
Do you think there's like a war on the third eye? Because people talk about, you know, fluoride in the water shuts down your third eye, and it's got that pine cone kind of thing. And in the middle of the Vatican, they've got the big pine cone.
Yeah. So, yes, definitely. And the pineal gland is interesting because, you know, I think that our pineal gland used to be actually connected to our eyes. And so, you know, we had a lot more sophisticated equipment, you know, in terms of our brains and eyes and bodies and everything. And I think we've just been very much downgraded, you know, over sort of thousands and thousands of years. Again, if you can, you know, trust the dates on that. But I suspect that we were a 12-stranded species, because my understanding is that all beings in the multiverse have 12 strands. And we were a 12-stranded species, possibly came here from somewhere else, possibly some of us, you know, all different bloodlines or whatever maybe. And we then had our DNA downgraded. And I think what's happening now is the DNA is starting to reactivate and move back up to what I suppose will essentially be 12, but I think possibly we're on like 3 or 4 or 5 now, whatever. But I also think that there's an energetic aspect to that. I think it's just really hard for our brains and our ego to understand anything that's not physical. You know, we can only understand physical, and that's the nature of the ego. It cannot understand anything esoteric or energetic or spiritual. It can only understand what it can see and touch. And so that limits us in so many ways, you know, but if you can get beyond that sort of thinking, then you can really, I think, connect more with the multidimensional aspects of your own self as well.
Yeah, it definitely appears like humanity has been shut down. When you see a lot of people, some people might call them the NPCs, that were the Cabbage Patch Babies or the clones or something, that don't seem to be able to, you know, cognitive dissonance is ruling their life, and they can't really, and they've got Stockholm syndrome, and they can't think for themselves. And you wonder if there's ever a hope for these people to kind of so-called wake up. But yeah, I know you think everyone's got the chance, I think, of, you know, for us all to evolve in. But I just want to mention briefly, you mentioned about, I think it was Archie or somebody, that's a baby found with 3 strands.
Oh, Alfie. Yes.
Alfie.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so what do you think's happening there?
So, well, yes. I mean, he's found with 3 strands. And now I think I also mentioned in my book as well that someone was found with 4 strands. But of course, they immediately labeled this as a disease or a disorder. And this really annoys me. Everything is labeled as a disorder and a disease, and we all fall for that, because we think doctors are God.
Well, you know what I don't like is all these children are getting labelled ADHD, but they're bored at their skills sitting in these classrooms, and that's probably why they're hyperactive. Get them outside doing practical stuff, they'll be happy as Larry, and this whole idea of sitting in a classroom, they're probably the most intelligent ones that are going crazy in there.
They are, because they're multidimensional.
They get put in Ritalin and speed or whatever to shut them up.
Yeah, I know, because I think that the children being born now, they are accessing their multidimensional self in the way that we did as well. And that's why I agree with you. When I look at the old world architecture, I feel like this is not physical. Yes, it's been stapled down into physical and what we call physical, because that's how the ego is perceiving everything. But none of this is physical. And I think these kids, I've been sort of observing many children, and I can see that definitely some have got vaccine injury. And I think some also have, like ADHD because it's induced, from too much white sugar and screen and all this sort of stuff. Yeah. But some of them, I look at them and I think, no, you don't come from here. You come from somewhere else, and you can just feel it, And I do agree with that whole concept of star seeds. Maybe the term is a little bit outdated now, and it's been sort of obviously like ridiculed on many, many levels, as everything does. But I do think that this is helping to activate the energies, to raise consciousness, to shift things on this planet. It's not just the planet with the energies raising. I think that there are other beings from other universes incarnating here, and are also helping to shift the energy as well. And I do think, some of these kids are definitely.
Yeah, as far as these children go, I mean, there was a thing in Russia apparently years ago where they left some children just to grow up and never had any input from adults, and some of them were doing telepathy and teleportation even and stuff like that.
Telekinesis. Yeah, I know, exactly. I've always tried to not interfere with my own kids, and see sort of, what their full potential is. But unfortunately, society, the fact that they want to have friends means that they block themselves. So it's a tough one, this. We've really got to just open our minds and start seeing the world, not in this closed, like how society expects us to be. We have to start stepping outside of that, and not to have the fear of just being ourself, our true self, and stepping into our true potential.
Yeah, this is the thing that's basically scourging humanity, isn't it? The fear. It's basically the television pumps it out. Like wherever you go, the radio is on or whatever, and you get this hourly news bulletin. So even like you try and block it out and just don't want to listen to it, the subconscious is taking all this in, and it's all very much that fear energy. And they're experts in, saying one thing, but actually behind it, they're putting another message out there. So then even things like EastEnders and stuff like that, is like making people think that's reality and that's the way to be. But actually, we've got so much more potential. This is what I find frustrating, that humanity has the potential to be so much better. And every day we get up and we choose to do these habitual jobs and pay our taxes, etc., and not question the authorities who are just authoring this world. But we have the potential. So we get cut off from our own power. And school, the idea of a school official changing direction, get everybody to think the same, and an authority figure, everyone taking the register and giving your name and all this stuff, is conditioning. How do we break out of that? I mean,
yeah, I know. And the thing is that the thing about the, we'll just call them parasitic elites for now. But the thing about them is that they need our permission. So all they can do is just program us. and of course it's done through the TV and film and everything, but there's just this constant programming. If you can step outside of the programming, which actually you can do that. I feel I can step outside of it. I'm sure there are many of your audience who can as well, and just start to observe and just see what's going on around us, and start to ask ourselves, these sort of deep questions that need an open mind to answer it. I think we can step outside of this illusion of reality. And just by doing that, you're shifting your consciousness. And the more of us that shift our consciousness outside of this programming, it's going to happen like a domino effect. We're all going to wake up. And it will be like, whoa. That's why when they talk about a black swan event, I don't think we need to have, aliens coming from, wherever and waking us all up. I don't think we need any of that. We're the ones creating this reality, and we always have been. It's human consciousness creating all of this, just like it created the old world as well. And we've just been hijacked and hacked by something or someone or whatever. We have to just get back into our own sovereign self again and understand that we're creating everything. They can't create this world without our energy. They're using us to create this world, that they want to live in. But we're the ones doing it, you see. So we just have to wake up out of the dream and realize that we're the ones that have the power. And as soon as we do that, we're shifting our energy, our vibration up, and we will no longer be a vibrational match to these lower vibrational beings. They'll be down here in a different dimension, and we'll be all up here. But there's not enough of us yet. And that's why, we're all doing these podcasts and writing books and trying to get this information out there, because we're trying to say to people, it's so simple. We just have to raise our consciousness to a level of vibration that exists beyond all the crap. So that's the beings, the entities, that's the pharmaceutical drugs, that's the vaccines, that's all of this stuff. None of that will be able to touch us once we get up to this level. And that's physics, it's quantum physics, the vibrational frequency.
I heard you do an interview with somebody, and you're talking about Edgar Casey.
Yeah.
That's his right name, I think. And he was talking about there's going to be two types of realities, almost like the ones that do service to self and then service to others. And I've heard shamans and stuff talk about bifurcation and like a split in reality. Do you think, again, but I've heard you then say everyone's going to make it, but do you think there's going to be a certain amount of people will raise their consciousness up till that happens, what you say, and the other ones might have to do another cycle, let's say 26,000 years or whatever, with the lower entities until they learn to take their power back and become, it's like, do you agree with people like David Icke talk about reincarnation trap and things like that? Or are we choosing to come here and we're choosing to, maybe if we're going to be a creator being in another level, we have to learn to be a creator being in this level, and then that's training us for the next stage. You got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for the theory, and I think that the indigenous tribes talk about this as well. I can't remember which one, but all we have to do is wake up and remember that we are a sovereign being. No one can touch us. We have pure free will, and we are creating this reality. I honestly think that is all it takes to leave this plane, this realm, this world, whatever. And yes, I think that there has been a karmic recycling, definitely, but it's a karmic recycling of souls who don't know that they're trapped in a karmic cycle. And I've connected with many past lives of my own, and I really feel that in my past lives, I didn't know. So, in this life, I've woken up. There will be other people that possibly will not wake up in this life, and they'll possibly go back into the karmic cycle, but at some point they'll wake up, because it's just like a natural evolution. We are sort of, I don't see it like more like raising our consciousness, but expanding our consciousness. So we could see like physical reality as 3D. If we expand our consciousness out to 4D, 5D, then 5D is space. is the galaxy. 60, 70, that's actually outside of physical reality. That's light, energy, So I see it more like that, really, rather than, ascending, more like expanding. And so, yes, I think there are some people that will just not wake up in this lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, I know a few, and basically I know somebody that's took the vaccine and they're now basically dying, and they will refuse to admit that, and I want to talk to them and maybe, explain some things, but it's just absolutely no point, because some people just got their mindset and that's that. So you just have to kind of, it's like going around, you just try and tell everyone the truth. I tried to do that when I first kind of woke up, but you quickly realise you become what you fight. You turn into a fascist dictator yourself. So somebody you have to be compassionate with people and see where they're at. And then if they want to engage in this type of conversation, then you can do it. But you have to respect people's free will almost in the journey. You can't be forced upon it. But what do you think about what the vaccine, especially this COVID one? I mean, I never got my son vaccinated 20 years ago because I researched vaccines then. But there seems to be this new mRNA technology, whatever. Do you think that's shutting people off from ascending, or what do you think is the purpose behind that?
I think it's possibly making it hard for some people. But all the people I know who've had the vaccine, and I'm an energy healer as well. I do Reiki and things like this. I'm firmly convinced that we can reverse all of the issues. Yes, they may have to do like a physical detox, but from an energetic point of view, I think we can reverse all of this, because I think that we need to understand that we are children of light. We are pure love. We are not these demonic entities. We're not these regressive races. We have, the sacred spark of life, or, divine connection to source, whatever it is that people call it. And I think just remembering that and realizing that nothing can touch us without our own permission. So not to fall into the fear of it, but to focus on healing your body and doing a detox, whatever it takes, doing energy healing on your body, and just connecting to source, universal life force energy, which is also called Reiki energy as well. Just connecting to that every single day, just downloading unconditional love into your body, just focusing on releasing everything that's not for your highest and best good. And the more times you do that, the higher you're raising your own vibration, until eventually you are vibrating above the level of, they can't touch you at that level.
So you go about that, it's like meditation and stuff. You say about expanding to these different dimensions. Like, if everyone could do that, all right, I'm just going to do that. But
no, it's meditation, yeah. And the more you meditate, if you can meditate every single day, even for just 1 month, you will have transformed your inner world, your energy. You will now be like relating, interacting with the physical world around you on a different level. Just getting yourself, becoming like a Reiki practitioner, and accessing universal life force on every single day for a month. Just doing that is going to change you. And you'll start to realize that life is fluid, it's multidimensional. It's not this, there's nothing to be scared of. And I would say that to people. I don't think that anything that has been done can harm us unless we let it.
So people can almost override these toxins that have been injected into them.
Yeah, I mean, they may have to do a physical detox. It really depends on where the vibration of their body is now. If they're a more spiritual and enlightened person, then their body is already quite vibrationally high. If they've been, I don't know, going to the pub every week, drinking tons of alcohol, eating crappy food, watching EastEnders every day, then yeah, their vibration is going to be much lower, and it might be harder for them to raise their vibration. So, but then like a physical detox, because physical is just energy waves at a lower vibration.
Yeah. What do you think about chemtrails when they've been doing it for years, but now obviously they've announced we're going to dim the sun, etc. And since they've announced that, I do think they're putting more out there. It seems to be, but some people say that there's different reasons for it. Some people say the nano dust that we're breathing in, whatever, and other people say that it's blocking the energy from the sun. It's almost like a DNA activation, and so the sun is giving us, putting out some kind of energy that they're trying to block to stop us raising the consciousness. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Yes, I mean, I agree with everything that you're saying, but I've started looking at this in a different way, and that is, like, don't you think it's getting a little bit like theatrical now out there? Who on earth would come up with the idea to block out the sun? And who on earth would agree to it? It is the stupidest, silliest idea. I can't believe that it's actually out there as a mainstream thing. And I feel like, come on, guys, I think someone is trying to make us wake up here, like, how stupid is it going to get before we actually go, hang on a second, should we actually be doing that?
This is what I feel sometimes. Like the dark side has just been so obviously again evil and whatever. It's just like there has to come a time where people say, come on, Keir Starmer or whoever, are we really believing this bullshit,
Yeah, I mean, it's not real. It's not true. I mean, I don't know what they're doing with the chemtrails. I see them spraying the sky all the time. And I don't know what's going on there. I really don't. I've heard many, many different theories, all the ones that you're saying, and it just doesn't make any logical sense. I mean, the sun is what gives us life. It is what gives everything life. It's not like we are living on a very, hot country, England is probably the last country that would need to have the sun blocked out. Yeah. So it doesn't make any logical sense whatsoever. So the fact that people have actually allowed this to happen is just, it shows the level of cognitive dissonance that we've reached. But, it's also maybe that they're trying to cover the skies, so that we're not able to see things. I never think that the answers are what we're being told the answers are. And there's
something about a second sun coming back.
Yes, and the white sun as well. I've been observing the sun for months and months now, and it's definitely white a lot of the time. Now, I know that's because of the clouds and everything, but I've seen just in the sky as itself is becoming whiter and whiter. Now, the white sun, I think, was part of the old world, and I think that people were living off this sun. It didn't burn our skin, I don't think. There were breatharians living off this sun, and or maybe, as you say, a second sun. So I think we have to ask ourselves, that's obviously not the reason. They're not blocking out the sun for global warming or climate change. That's not the reason, because it's too idiotic. So what else are they doing it for? And yeah,
there's a guy I follow. He's called Chief Ironbush, and he's this Native American kind of elder, and he's acquired knowledge. A lot of it's downloads, but a lot of it's from his lineage or whatever. And he says it goes from red sun to white sun and then back to red sun. And when it gets to each end of that, I think the white sun is like an end times based on fire. And then when it transfers back to the red sun, it's like a flood. And that's the reason for this change in the colour of the sun. I know in school these days, or they're actually teaching children that the sun's white instead of yellow, which is...
That's interesting. So they know it's white, yeah? So then they're possibly blocking out the sun or the sky for other reasons, and that's where we need to ask ourselves, right, so why are they doing it? What is it for? And I do think that there is a galactic element to all of this. I really, really do. And it's not just our planet. It's never just been our planet. And so when we're sort of thinking outside of our planet and what else could be out there, what could be going on, I think that's when it starts to get a lot more interesting and when it starts to make a lot more sense. you know, because if we've got aggressive ETs or aggressive entities or whatever here, which I suspect we have for quite some years, it means that there must be benevolent ones as well. So wouldn't the benevolent ones want to be helping in some way? Wouldn't, you know, that's what starseeds are. Beings, entities, whatever, that are incarnated in here to help. It means that we're not, it's not just like one level. We're not just talking one level, one dimension. There are many, many, many different aspects of this. And I think, again, that gives me great hope. I don't think we're on our own doing this. I really, really don't. And, but it's human consciousness that is creating all of this. And I think we just need to step back into understanding that we're creating all of this and start creating a better world. And I'm now sort of getting involved with more like sort of eco communities and things like this, because this is something that we can do rather than trying to break down these, you know, ridiculous structures and systems that we've had in our world, governing our world for decades and centuries, you know, and looking at these stupid political leaders who, you know, are like little 3-year-olds really. And again, that's a reason as well, they're like that. But looking at all of that, I think we just have to take our energy away from that. They are siphoning our energy into creating all of this crappy world that we've been living in. We just have to literally turn our backs on them, say, we're not doing your game anymore, and create a new world and put all of our human consciousness and energy into that. And that's it. We've got a new reality, a better world, and everything is fine.
That's what I think too. That's a nice way to end the interview. Something positive. But yeah, take our power back, and instead of fighting that, you end up becoming it, create a new world based on communities sharing, and start with the food. I think it's a good one to start with, because the stuff in the supermarket is not food.
It's not, is it? It's not.
No, it's terrible.
Again, yeah, I mean, subtle programming again. You know, supermarket food used to be the cheap stuff. You know, now it's as expensive as the farm shop. You know, it's yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and if you can, support the local farmer, but they're under attack as well. I mean, we could sit here and talk for hours about all the insanity that's going on. But it's been very interesting chatting with you, and I hope people have got a good insight into the kind of work you do.
Thank you.
We'll check out your YouTube channel. And what's the name of your YouTube channel?
It's at Elisabeth Hancock.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just my name, yeah. And of course, my second book as well, you know, which is out now.
Which is Human Origins. What's the full name? Human Origins,
the Multiverse, and Our Star Ancestry. Yeah, and it's huge because it's got so many pictures and stuff in it, you know. So
you can pick it up on your website, which is elisabethhancock.com.
Yes, exactly. And it's Elisabeth, all spelled with an S, not a Z.
That's right, yeah. Differentiates you from the Queen.
It's the Welsh spelling, because the Welsh didn't like the Queen or the royal family.
Yeah, so it's been very nice chatting with you, and I've certainly enjoyed watching your videos over the past few days. And lots to learn and think about. And you go down many different rabbit holes, so I'm all for that. So well done on that one. And we'll maybe chat again sometime in the future. Thanks for your time, Elisabeth.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And thanks everyone else for watching. I'll be back with John Sloman in a couple of weeks. He's going to perform a couple of songs, and I'll let you know about that when it's ready to come online. So thanks for watching. Cheers and out. Bye-bye.